Henning, to start off, what initially sparked your interest in the recruiting industry? What got you into it?
Well, Jesse, I I stand here and say I've never worked a day in my life in the recruiting industry until about 5.5 years ago. And what sparked my interest was two things. Prior to entering this space, I worked as a sales leader in for about 25 years in different companies, different products, different geographies. And I was done with that part of my career. I didn't want to be leading sales teams anymore. I was more interested in doing something new. And the
Mhm.
second piece is that when I went out, I realized that there was something missing. There was a missing link between fractional executives and companies who have a need for that particular skill set. And I felt I was qualified enough to fill that gap with what I'm doing now, which is acting as a recruiter between those two groups.
So was it a hard adjustment going from your sales background to this, or was it pretty natural from what you saw?
It was both. So it is a hard transition because you're having different conversations. And there's also an expectation from a client and an executive perspective that
Mhm.
things are done the way that they're used to it. And I
Mhm.
decided early on to do some of the things a little differently and not just copy paste what had done before in the recruiting industry. The easy part is the fact that in recruiting, I'm constantly selling, right? I'm selling myself
Mhm.
and my business to clients. I'm selling clients to executives. So there is a continuous sales effort, and everything is conversation based. Basically, my days are spent morning to evening in conversations, and in that is very much like a sales role.
Mhm. Well, let's dive into Vendux with what sets Vendux apart. Tell the audience what you guys specifically focus on, and then what makes you different compared to, I mean, there's millions of recruiting firms or thousands out there. So tell us what you guys do.
Yeah, so what makes us unique is really inherent in what we're doing. We focus on one singular role, and that is the sales leadership role within a company. Positions like a CRO, CSO, VP of sales, director of sales. Those are some of the roles that we fill. And that's our only focus. We don't do any of the other roles that exist within a company. And
Hmm.
we also focus primarily on this role as a fractional contractor. Occasionally, companies come to us and say, "Can you help us in full-time recruiting?" And we can do that as well. But our outbound primary focus is on placing fractional executives into those sales leadership roles. And
Hmm.
we've set up a process that I label as technology enabled, but with white glove service on both sides. So that means to me, we're not a marketplace where you have both sides of this matchmaking self-service, executives creating their profiles and CEOs going in and searching themselves. Those two sides are white glove because we want to interview the executive and onboard them onto our roster and vet them before they're available and before they're on the roster. And we want to work with clients because we found that clients are, I mean, they always know what they want, but in the context of a fractional sales leadership role, they might not always know what they need because founders, owners, CEOs rarely have been in sales leadership roles. And in particular, they probably haven't worked with too many fractional executives before. So we help them scope what that assignment should look like. And in this middle,
Hmm.
we're technology enabled and we developed our own software in order to match those two, the needs of the client with the executive. And we didn't start out using our own software. We took two different softwares off a shelf and tried to use them, but none of them were designed, in my opinion, to fit the fractional executive process and the specifics of a sales leadership role. They were all designed for what I would label general executive recruiting, but not for the fractional sales leadership role. And so the centerpiece is something that we developed and have been using for about 3 years now. So have plenty of experience with it, continue to improve it and make it better with every iteration.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, especially for the audience as well. So that software that you developed, this is that focused on, just because you guys know exactly what the company should be looking for and what these fractional roles really consist of. And so you already know how to kind of filter them through that process. So that's why you created the software. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, so there's a little bit more complexity in how it actually
I'm
works.
sure. Yeah.
But in a nutshell, you're describing it well. It is the fact that we built this specifically for one role that necessitates, specific, for example, specific criteria that we're capturing. To give you an example, we want to understand the different sales scenarios that a sales leader has been part of in their career. In traditional
Mhm.
recruiting, you highlight the revenue they were responsible for, the growth that they delivered, and maybe you talk a little bit about key clients or that they've had, nameplate clients. But what we want to
Mhm.
know is what kind of deal size were you pursuing? How long was the sales cycle in that particular business for you? Who were the decision makers that you were selling to? Not the company, but the role that you were selling to. What
Mhm.
type of process were you pursuing? Was this a transactional, one call close, or was it a strategic enterprise type $1 million 18-month sales process? And anything in between. So we want to be able to dive down to that level of granularity in order to be able to match someone, because in our opinion, it's important for a fractional executive to come in with exactly the same experience that the company now is going through at that moment in time. That allows somebody who comes in as a part-time contractor to be immediately successful, because there can't be much of a learning curve when you come in as a fractional.
And is that kind of one of the struggles that companies face, your clients face, or face before working with you of finding those people, finding the exact right match, and that's where you come in, and that's the key of your business?
Yes, if
Mhm.
every CEO, every founder, every business owner knows someone in sales, knows someone who
Mhm.
has led a sales team. And the
Mhm.
the key question is that someone, just by virtue of being known, the right person for the job? And the answer is often no, they're not, because they haven't operated that particular sales scenario. They haven't led sales teams for that particular type of product. They are undoubtedly great sales leaders, but not a fit for that particular scenario. And we have a pre-vetted roster today of nearly 900 executives, and collectively, those 900 can cover every vertical, every type of product, every sales scenario, every growth stage a company is in, and all the other criteria that we discuss with clients. We rarely have a situation where we have to admit that we don't have the right person on that roster. And we are not going outside of that. So we're not going into the world of LinkedIn or Indeed to search for somebody, we only go to our roster because those are the only people where we have those details available to us.
Hmm. Interesting. Do you mind me asking how you got that initial roster? Was that just over time, naturally, as you vetted and interviewed different people, and that's just grown?
Initially, we reached out. So sales leaders who are in the fractional executive space identify on LinkedIn as fractionals. So when we started
Hmm.
the business 5.5 years ago, we had an outreach program to connect with those
Hmm.
executives.
Yeah.
That stopped 3 years ago. We no longer have to do that. We have a big roster, but we also now getting all our additions through inbound leads. So executives who've worked with us or who are currently on our roster telling others. We are members in several communities where sales leaders gather, and that brings us an influx of new talent. So we don't have to do any active outreach at this point.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. That's a good place to be, and be able to have that base for your clients. I want to focus kind of on the candidate a little bit, the executive. What should executives consider before pursuing these fractional roles if they've never done it before, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question because I talk to executives who are in this stage of, wanting to jump out of a corporate career into the fractional world every day. And
Hmm.
there are certain things that make someone successful or not successful in this transition. And the one thing, I mean, there are a number of factors. One thing is have a network. I mean, when I left my corporate job, my last corporate
Hmm.
sales leadership role, I had 700 connections on LinkedIn. I mean, that's nothing in the
Yeah.
LinkedIn world today. I,
Yeah.
for years, refused anyone that I didn't know, anyone that I wasn't personally connected to as a contact on LinkedIn. And,
Hmm.
you know, but if you start early and build a network and build the right kind of network, then you have an advantage when you exit the corporate world and start working fractionally. And the right contacts are founders, owners, CEOs, board members, investors, startup communities. Those are the kind of contacts that you want as a fractional executive because your ICP, your target audience, are companies between 1 and 15 million in revenue. We're not talking Fortune 5,000 here. We're talking
Hmm.
small business at best, small, medium-sized businesses at the 10, 20, $30 million range. So be
Hmm.
connected to the right people. And then I also believe that another best practice advice is put yourself out there. This isn't something where you can moonlight a few hours and think that you can build your presence in this space. Commit to it. Be prepared that it takes time because you're building a business. You're building a business around yourself and your own skill. You need to put yourself out there, make the world known that you're available as a fractional executive, make the world known what are your superpowers that you can bring to the table, what are the problems that you can solve, and what
Hmm.
what type of roles are you looking for. Make that known, and if you follow that, then you are more likely to be successful. And maybe a final note: there are programs, there are businesses out there who provide that kind of transition training, and who can work with you as a fractional executive entering the space to make them successful.
Hmm. It sounds like it's a lot more complex. Honestly, I maybe tell me if I'm wrong here, but it kind of sounds like I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm the founder of Revive Executive Branding. It sounds like it's almost like starting a business where that saying of you overestimate what you can do in a year and you underestimate what you can do in 5 years. You have to build your network, you have to come off as this fractional executive, and there's a lot of pieces that go into that. Is that a safe way to kind of explain it and compare it?
Absolutely. It is building a
Okay.
business,
Yeah.
building a business around yourself. Um, and uh, and it's not a business until you have a client, a paying client, I should add, right? So
Yeah.
that is the litmus test for your value proposition that you bring to the table for your product market fit as a fractional executive.
Mm. That's great for our listeners to hear. I really do. I don't try to just say everything is great on a podcast, but I love this information because there's a lot of fractional roles, a lot of fractional executives that I speak with that are looking for new opportunities. And so I want to talk about from your perspective, what do you see as the future of fractional engagement? Do you think it's a trend that will continue to grow as it sounds like it might be more beneficial and easier for people to do exactly what they're good at and be in a niche of sales or whatever niche that they're in. But tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, I look back now at 5.5 years in the space, and there's definitely a continuous increase in opportunities. There
Mhm,
are expansion shifts in the verticals where this role is prevalent. I mean, it all started in tech and SaaS, then moved into professional services, now in more traditional manufacturing. So that is
mhm,
a trend, and that's part of why there is more and more opportunity because there is a greater recognition. As a organizational innovation, the fractional executive model started in SaaS and tech because that's where organizational innovation always happens first. Manufacturing, traditional businesses always come last on that. They are great product innovators, but they're not necessarily innovative in their organizational structures. And
mhm,
so to see them now embracing that tells me that there is a great future ahead because in the US, 90% of our businesses are manufacturing or are non-tech businesses, I should say. Only
mhm,
10% are tech and SaaS. The rest is manufacturing, professional services, and others. So
mhm,
having the model progress into those verticals tells me that there is a great future ahead. And I think as an organizational alternative to full-time hiring or bringing in consultants or bringing in temp workers at lower levels, it is something that will stick around. This isn't going
mhm,
away. It is not a fit for every business. It's not a fit in every situation. I don't ever expect a Fortune 5,000 company to embrace a fractional executive model, but for
mhm,
everybody else, it's out there now and will continue to grow.
mhm. This might seem unrelated, but I'm curious, with fractional executives, do you see a typical age span of, do they typically be at the latter ends of their careers, or is it all across the board from what you see?
So it has to be at the later end of someone's career
Hmm.
because in order to be able to step into a role and be immediately effective without a learning curve, you have
Hmm.
you need the experience of having done this role before. You need the experience of having gone through several role changes and company changes in your career. We're also talking about executive functions, right? We're not talking about an individual contributor role. We're talking about a leadership role. And again, that typically comes later in one's career. I do think that it doesn't require somebody to be 60 plus to have the necessary amount of experience. But I don't think that someone in their first 10 years of their career are necessarily equipped with the right experiences to be able to successfully function as a fractional executive.
Hmm. Especially when you've got be very picky to find that precise match, right? It sounds like, you have to know that they fit every single quality that company needs. And sometimes the company doesn't even know it. That's how I'm understanding it, right? Is that's where you guys
Yeah.
come and say, hey, this is, you're not thinking about this, but this is a really important topic to think about when you're hiring a fractional sales executive.
Yeah.
So, I'm,
Let me
I'm
just jump in
curious.
if I
Yeah, no,
if I
please. Yeah,
may, just
please do.
an example. Um,
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of founders, owners, and CEOs, and their top qualification criteria is always, we need somebody who has experience in our industry.
Hmm.
And then we dig a little deeper. So why is that? What in this particular role needs to be the experience? And then we often find out that something else can be the placeholder for that. So somebody who's in manufacturing in a very narrow vertical, um, all they really look for is someone who's done manufacturing before, because that is a unique environment to sell in, different considerations from running a SaaS business or running a professional services business. So that allows us to broaden the spectrum of talent that we can bring to the table. Sometimes we look at it and say, it's not about the vertical. The challenge lies in the product itself. Good example is SaaS. Um, if we look for a SaaS sales leader, we definitely want somebody who has sold software as a service before, and not somebody who's never done that. Sometimes when they say it's an industry vertical, what they're actually looking at is more the person as a decision maker. So in my career, I sold a lot to marketing leaders, VP of marketing, director of marketing, CMOs. That is a
Hmm.
unique target audience that requires a unique lingo to actually get their attention. If you have that experience, you're way ahead of the game than somebody who's never sold to that decision maker before. So that's part
Hmm.
of when we scope an assignment, we dig deep and try to get all these specifics right, and really understand, and agree with the client, obviously, as to what are the right criteria that somebody has to check in order to be successful in that particular sales leadership role.
Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I think I love the examples and showing, kind of how it works and the way that it has helped people. I mean, being a founder of a company, I know I mentioned that already, but I found that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I speak with and founders and starters of these companies that, there's a lot of questions you just don't know to ask when you're hiring somebody or when you're thinking about filling a position or expanding to a different area. So it sounds like having Vendux there and really helping with that can be really beneficial. It's not for everybody, but for those people that it is beneficial for, it's really going to be a growth and an asset for them to have you guys there. So
That's
tell me, a lot of the listeners here are a lot of great executives that are great candidates for some of these roles that you might be filling. And if they're listening right now and they think, that's great, I'd love to speak with Henning or I'd love to reach out to Vendux, what's the best way to find you? What's the best way to reach you?
Well, one thing you can do is look at our website, vendux.org, vendux.org. Just
Mm-hmm.
check it out, read through it, make sure it resonates with you. That to me is key, right? If the language that we're using doesn't speak to you, then maybe we're not a fit for each other. On the website,
Mm-hmm.
you have my contact details. You can also find me directly on LinkedIn, and connect with me, and I'll be happy to jump on a call and explore the opportunity with anyone.
Perfect. Perfect. I'll make sure to put that link to the website in this podcast below for the listeners to see
Thank you.
and find you. And maybe it's great, maybe it's not a good fit. But we really appreciate you being here, Henning. Thank you for your time and for really giving some great content for people that have a lot of questions about these fractional roles.
Thank you for having me.